Robert Saleh said that Bam Knight was juicy as a runner, getting north and south. Adding Knight was active over James Robinson because he thinks that his running style fits better with the Jets and what they want. No one's ever used the adjective juicy on me.
I was just going to say, like, where are you guys at on men calling other men juicy?
I'm not calling nobody juicy when we talk about football. I'm not doing that.
Fair enough. I appreciate that.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Men calling other men juicy or not so much. It is noon on Thursday on Peacock with Jay Croucher. It is 5 o'clock somewhere. My name's Matthew Berry. Welcome into the happy hour. The video you just saw was myself, yourself, and of course our good friend Lawrence Jackson at Lord Don't Lose talking about his uncomfortableness with calling other men juicy when it comes to football.
He was a little too uncomfortable about it for mine. He's very aggressive.
Felt like maybe like protest too much a little bit.
Yeah. Did he have a bad juicy incident at some point in his life? Lord Don't Lose.
Or maybe a very good juicy incident, and that he did not want to go there.
Yeah.
I don't know. We will delve into that. We're gonna learn some therapy. We'll unpack that with him. We will unpeel that with him next week. By the way, we also had a long discussion yesterday about Bam.
Sure.
And I think there was some confusion a little bit because we talked about the fact we liked Bam Knight.
Yeah.
Right? And then in the NBA, there's Bam
Adebayo.
Yeah. I was going to almost mispronounce it. And we were talking about how we needed a Bam in baseball. We needed other Bams. But John Cox emailed me, says, listening to your show on Channel 87, Sirius XM, and you stated you had never heard of anyone else named Bam. That's not exactly true. We talked about other people. We just needed somebody Bam in baseball. But he said, Google Bam Morris, which I'd forgotten about Bam Morris. Bam Morris, Texas Tech legend, Bam Morris, played with the Steelers and had a couple of moments there. He was actually he was the Doak Walker Award winner in 1993 and drafted by the Steelers in 94. I remember Bam Morris.
Okay, so add him to the list.
Well,
a little before my time, but that's okay.
Yeah, fair enough. But anyway, John, we appreciate that. And that's right. It's so interesting because I'm so used to, candidly, I spent 15 years at ESPN. And at ESPN, it was just sort of like, you're on ESPN, and like that's sort of it. It's kind of a bubble. And here, NBC has a different philosophy, not better, not worse. I'm not sitting here trying to denigrate ESPN. I want to be very clear about that. But it's a different philosophy, is all it is. And so this show, not only available, obviously, for streaming on Peacock, it's also available every day on our NFL and NBC YouTube channel.
Yes, it is.
It is available as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's available on demand on Peacock. You can also watch us live at noon and I want to say 4 or 5. Anyway, there's a couple of different times. You can check your local listings. But also, we air twice on Sirius XM Radio. We air live at noon on Channel 85 on the NBC Sports Audio channel, and then they replay us at 7 o'clock on Sirius XM's Fantasy Sports Radio, Channel 87, which is where John caught us. So we appreciate that. And so, NBC doing a good job of just sort of distributing the show to everyone. They're like, why should only one channel be tortured? Let's make sure that everyone in the universe can either deride Matthew or ignore him or what have you. So it's exciting. It's very exciting.
Spread the torture.
Exactly.
The moniker of the Fantasy Football
Happy Hour.
Happy
Why should the audience at Sirius XM be denied
torture?
My torture, right?
Yes.
Exactly. The dulcet tones of my voice.
Yes, exactly. We like to spread it like
right.
jam. All right, let's get to the Rotoworld headlines.
Or Bam.
Yes.
You don't have to laugh at that. Yeah, you know what? I want to be clear about this, Jay. I want to say this to you. I want to say this to you, and I want to say this in front of America, not privately, not behind some closed doors.
Talk to me.
I want to say this in front of witnesses here, in front of at least the massive audience we've got here on Peacock Live, which is you've got the gig. You don't have to fake laugh at everything I say. You don't have to Ed McMahon it. You don't have to Robin Quivers it. You can you can legitimately laugh or ignore. Because not all my jokes are winners.
No, they're not. In fact, there's a lot of losers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some clang off the rim, much like your Nets over there.
Yeah, much like my Brooklyn Nets and James Harden, one of the great Brooklyn Nets of our time.
Exactly.
Let's talk about one of the great Chicago Bears of recent times. Anyway,
will
Justin
they retire
Fields.
when they retire his number? And I'm sure they're gonna. You think they'll do it at a strip club? Will the ceremony be at a strip club, or will it? Or you think it'll actually be in the stadium?
It'd have to be a bad strip club to represent James Harden's time with the Nets, but that would be the locale.
If the legends are true, like he's
an old-timer. All right.
He's an all-timer in other arenas. All right, let's go.
All-time fantasy guy this year, Justin Fields' shoulder was limited in Wednesday's practice, Matthew, and the Bears, they've added the immortal Tim Boyle from the Lions practice squad.
We talked about this at the end of last show yesterday, and we thought, well, maybe this means adding Tim Boyle. Maybe this means they're going to shut down Justin Fields. But I weirdly think the news you just read is actually, interesting because Trevor Siemian did not practice. He's banged up, and so Tim Boyle may be about depth behind Justin Fields and not necessarily, hey, we're shutting down Justin Fields. To me, the most exciting thing you just said was limited. Like, you can't be limited in practice if you don't practice. So the fact that on a Wednesday Justin Fields was out there means, like, hey, there's a chance we see Justin Fields at home against the Packers. Young buck against the old gunslinger, Aaron Rodgers coming to town. So we'll see. I think obviously if Justin Fields is playing, I think you're starting him. Like even a 70% Justin Fields without Darnell Mooney is still better than a lot of the guys you're going to roll out there because you would expect him still to run. That would be my expectation here. But other than him and David Montgomery, who we'll talk about in a little bit, I don't want a part of this Bears offense.
Chase Claypool, number one wide receiver now?
Yeah.
Kind of cooked Sauce Gardner on one play?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's obviously Darnell Mooney's injury is obviously increased opportunity for Chase Claypool. And so I'm open to the idea. I'm not shutting it out. I'm not saying no. But against Green Bay, my expectation here, especially, let me find out who the quarterback is. I'll feel better about Chase Claypool if it's Justin Fields, if it's Trevor Siemian, or Nathan Peterman, or Tim Boyle under center. Yeah, obviously, you don't feel great about that. My expectation against Green Bay, who over the last 4 weeks is the second worst run defense in the NFL, is that this is all David Montgomery. It's more. And we're going to talk about hint. Here's a hint. Here's a little foreshadowing for you.
Yeah.
It's the love-hate show. Dave Montgomery makes the love list. I'm just going to go ahead and blow that surprise right now.
We'll talk about him. How many times did Justin Fields throw the first time they played? It was 11 passing attempts, something like that. Not expecting they'll be throwing much. Regardless.
Something like this. And again, I mean, like they were at the Jets, and it was Simeon's first start, but 10 fantasy points. So it's like you don't have a ton of confidence in a non-Justin Fields quarterback for the Bears.
No. You've got more confidence, though, in Mike McDaniel, one of the best head coaches in the league this year. And he said
what are his odds for Coach of the Year?
It's like plus 600 or so off the top of my head. Nick Sirianni's the favorite because he's only got one loss.
But I think I'd rather put some money on Mike McDaniel. I'll tell you why. Number one, so plus 600, you like those odds, obviously. This is a media award.
He's very cool.
People love Mike McDaniel.
He's very cool.
Like, he's funny and sort of awkward, and I think he reminds sports writers of themselves. You know what I mean? They're like, I'm awkward as well, but also I'm funny, and they're not. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm funny.
It's a very dry sense of humor that resonates.
He's great. Like, he's, like, I would want to cover the Dolphins just to go to his press conferences. Like, he's great.
Yeah, I agree. And look, they're like plus 250 to win the AFC East. And if they win the division over the Bills, then you think that he probably just wins Coach of the Year. But he said that he thinks Raheem Mostert can play with his knee injury in Week 13 against the 49ers. Raheem was, friend of the podcast, limited in practice yesterday. What does this do for the Dolphins' backfield?
I think it complicates it a little bit, but not that much. I think I'm more concerned about the fact they're playing the San Francisco 49ers, who allow the fewest rushing yards per game to opposing running backs so far this season. So, I mean, and you don't want to say, like, it's a revenge game. Mike's going to try to give him one, because it's also one for Jeff Wilson Jr. Yeah. Right? And we expect both guys there. And so my expectation here is that you see a split of carries here. I think it's probably going to be 60-40 in favor of Wilson, maybe even 65-35 here in a tough matchup. In a game in which potentially is low scoring, like it's the most recent line I saw was 46.5.
I like the under.
I haven't updated. I haven't updated it today, but like as of yesterday, it was 46.5. So maybe it's moved a little bit, but I think it feels like a low-scoring game.
It does to me, and Teron Armstead is a huge part of that team.
Yes.
To me, he's their third most important player behind Tua and Tyreek. And when he came out of the game against Houston, Tua was under siege. He was getting sacked every second play. So that's a big concern for the running game and then also just for the passing game in general. So, I think that game goes under.
And I also think, by the way, I mean, you just think about Miami. Miami's a bottom 12 run defense over the last 4 weeks. So I think it's a lot of Christian McCaffrey, and maybe you see some Tevin Coleman, Tyrion Davis-Price. But I think Shanahan's going to be like, we're going to win this game by grinding it out, long sustained drives, not giving Tua and Tyreek, time to like quick hit and everything like that. And so, I just Mostert's my running back 37. So, I mean, good news for the Dolphins offense, but I think at least for this week against San Francisco, it's more about lowering the expectations for Jeff Wilson than it is about wanting to put Mostert back into your lineup.
Yep. All right, let's go to Dallas Goedert, who's dealing with the shoulder at the moment. He said he hopes to return from injured reserve in week 15, so still a couple of weeks away. I mean, I think that this will hurt Devontae Smith, who had 9 targets on the weekend. It ends mercifully. The Grant Calcaterra era. I think he had -2 yards on the weekend. So, look, I think that you're starting Dallas Goedert as soon as he comes back, and you're still starting Devontae Smith probably, but it hurts him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's unlikely he's available, but it's worth checking because he's not 100% rostered. He's actually available in about 16% of Yahoo leagues. So it's just worth checking to see if somebody got bye week, stuck on a bye week and dropped him thinking he was done for the year, because he's not. Prior to his injury, he was the 3rd best tight end in fantasy on a points per game basis. So it's worth seeing, especially down the stretch. Here's his schedule if he returns in week 15, right? At Chicago, at Dallas versus the Saints versus the Giants. You don't love that matchup with the Saints, but he's sort of matchup agnostic.
I think so. You're just starting Dallas Goedert if he's back, given the paucity of the tight end position. Let's talk about Jaylen Warren.
Hey, by the way, somebody using the word paucity on this podcast was plus 800.
Yeah, well,
there you go. That just cashed.
I was thinking, I couldn't think of another word, and paucity just sprung to me. Jaylen Warren said doctors have cleared him to return from his hamstring injury. He expects to play this week against the Falcons, so don't go blowing any budget on the great Benny Snell Jr., as you like to call him.
Yeah, well, Benny Snell, a lot of people already went through waivers. Well, we talked about this, that we didn't. We thought that if Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren missed, it would probably be some Benny Snell, some Anthony McFarland. There'd be kind of a mixture there, but we thought at least one of them would be back and possibly both. Now, Najee Harris did not practice yesterday. We're taping this, or shooting this, I should say, Thursday at 12:12. So we'll see if Harris comes back today on a Thursday, but certainly Warren needs to be rostered. We do expect, even if Harris is back, maybe he's not 100% healthy. They were already using Warren prior to his injury, prior to Harris's injury as well. They play the Falcons this week.
Juicy matchup.
That is a juicy matchup. That's the correct use of it.
Yes.
Lawrence, of course, is a fan of the Atlanta Falcons. He grew up around there. Yeah, exactly.
At Lord Don't Juicy.
Yeah, at Lord Don't Juicy. It is a juicy matchup. It is. There's a lot of fantasy juice to be had from potentially a Jaylen Warren start, especially if Najee Harris misses. I currently have Jaylen Warren at running back 45 because my expectation when I'm doing my rankings is if Harris is going to play. But if Harris is out, if he misses today, I'll start rising Warren in my ranks.
Yep. All right, let's talk about some more running backs as we get to running back love, hate.
What is this music?
It's kind of scary in a way. Let's start with Rhamondre Stevenson, who is a frequent guest in this part of Love Hate.
Yeah.
He headlines the love list going up against the Buffalo Bills tonight.
Tonight, absolutely. It is Thursday Night Football. And you had me at, listen, I've been pro Rhamondre all season long.
Guy. Really hitched your wagon to it.
Yeah. In the preseason, why is he being drafted behind Damian Harris? I prefer Rhamondre Stevenson. Guys, it is Rhamondre Stevenson. SZN, as the kids like to say. What's exciting for me, not only the fact that Damian Harris is out, not that we root for injury, but the fact of the matter is we should see a massive workload for Stevenson tonight. But the workload, the passing game usage, right? Past 5 games, he's had 33 receptions. He's had at least 6 receptions in 4 of the last 5, as you see it there on your screen. He's averaging over 106 yards from scrimmage since week 3. This is a guy, he's basically 100 yards from scrimmage in the bank. And then you think about this Bills defense. Now, they're getting healthier. They lost Von Miller, but they're getting some other guys back. But still, over the last month, the Buffalo Bills allowing over 100 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs, games in New England. How do you stop a Josh Allen? You keep him on the sideline. And so I think you expect a run-heavy, slow-paced offense from the Patriots tonight.
Yep. We talked about this yesterday as well, is that Mac Jones looked fantastic against the Vikings. He looked like he was back, and I think there was
He looked like Tom Brady.
Yeah, better than Tom Brady right now.
Right.
I think there's a line of thinking that, Mac, he came back off the injury, had to play the Jets twice, have a really good secondary, played the Colts and Sam Ellinger, where he didn't have to do anything. So maybe he's just back to being the guy from last year who was really, really good. So I wouldn't be writing off Mac Jones. I think that just helps Rhamondre Stevenson, better offense, more scoring opportunities.
Yeah, by the way, the Bills are a bottom 5 pass defense in the last month. I mean,
chronically banged up. There's just always guys missing.
Again, Tre'Davious White back. I mean, again, they're getting healthier on defense. So, but I will say that after losing a game that they honestly should not have lost, on Thanksgiving, and this is a divisional matchup, games in New England, Patriots will be ready. Bill, I'm not saying they're going to win, but the fact that the line is, I think, 3, it's down to 3.
3.5 at the moment.
It was 4.5 yesterday.
Yep.
So, I mean, people, the public are on the Patriots as well, but just the fact that, everyone's expecting this to be a very close game where at the beginning of the year, if you'd set this line, it would have been like 7, right? I mean, easy.
Yep.
So, this one will be really interesting to sort of see how it plays out. The other thing I'll say here, just real quickly, is I don't know if you've seen this, but this was a tweet that was going around Twitter, which I thought was amazing. Somebody put the Hunter Henry touchdown from Thanksgiving up against the Travis Kelce touchdown, which was basically the exact same play, which is he landed on the goal line and the ball squibbed free. Hunter Henry actually had more control. It moved, but he ended up controlling it. Travis Kelce fell down on the goal line and then it squibbed out. Kelce's was called a touchdown. Hunter Henry's was not.
That was absolutely a touchdown. The thing is when it's called a touchdown on the field, if you have to look at it 50 times, then it's a touchdown because it's not clear and conclusive.
Preach.
Yeah.
Preach. The rule
Very
is it has to be clear and overwhelming evidence. If it has to be clear and conclusive. And so if it takes more than 30 seconds, it ain't conclusive.
It's a touchdown.
It's a touchdown, or it's whatever it was called on the field.
Yes, very frustrating for Patriots +3 bettors like myself.
Yes.
Let's go talk about David Montgomery, who lit up the Packers when he faced them back in, I think, week 2 on Sunday Night Football. That was a strange game because the Bears were just averse to throwing entirely, and the Packers still couldn't stop David Montgomery, and he's on the love list.
And they were down. Not only were the Bears not throwing, but they were getting their ass kicked. You know what I mean? And so, but they still ran. They were like, we're not going to throw. We don't care. We don't care what the score is. We are going to establish this run, dang it. And so you mentioned that first matchup, week 2 at Green Bay. Ultimately, he wound up with 136 yards on 17 touches. Khalil Herbert, also got some run in that game here. Since Khalil Herbert went on the IR, Dave Montgomery has over 110 total yards in both games. Packers have allowed over 100 rushing yards to running backs in 6 of the last 7 games. Miles Sanders just got off the schneid in a big way against them last week. I mean, you just saw. You can run on the Packers. And by you, I mean literally you.
Yes.
You, Jay Croucher, can run on the Packers.
The only person who can't is Derrick Henry.
For some reason, it's so weird. It's so super weird. Well, I think they literally put all 11 in the box against Derrick Henry. Anyway, Dave Montgomery's my number 13 running back. Running back 13 for me. He makes the love list. Full speed ahead, no matter who's at quarterback for Chicago.
Yep. Now, I haven't been able to locate this guy the past 2 weeks, but I've located him today on my rundown, and that's Dameon Pierce, who was on the love list with a very favorable matchup against the Cleveland run defense.
Yeah, he's been bad the last 2 weeks, to your point, but my expectation here is that they're going to continue to run him. Like, he's still getting work, even though it hasn't been super productive. The Browns aren't going to blow out the Texans. Anything's possible, but I don't believe that. I honestly think this is how I think this game plays out. It's Deshaun Watson's first game back. It's on the road at Houston. Deshaun Watson hasn't played an NFL game in like almost 2 years. I think, especially given that he's going back to Houston, where so many of his alleged incidents happened, and there'll be a lot of news around and controversy around his return to not only the NFL but specifically Houston. My expectation is that what they want to do is Cleveland's going to want to just try to make it not about Deshaun Watson and try to run the ball, especially given the fact that, A, that's a strength of Cleveland. Nick Chubb's as good a running back as there is in the NFL from a pure talent standpoint. And B, the Texans have a historically bad run defense. And so, ease Watson into playing, quarterback in the NFL. We're not going to try to you're not going to have you win it. Let's try to get you a W here. And so in what I expect to be a fairly slow-paced game, I don't think the Texans are down by a significant margin, at least, for a while. So I think they should be able to run effectively against the Browns. And it's worth noting, as you mentioned, literally since week 4. They allow the second most rushing yards per game to running backs. They've given up the most. They're tied for the most rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs over that stretch. They give up the second most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Dameon Pierce is good. Yeah, I'm back in on Dameon Pierce this week. I know it's been a tough couple of weeks, but top 15 play for me this week. And I just want to be clear, last thing I wanted to say here, and I give this caveat all the time, but I think it's important because not everybody watches every show. We have to talk about Deshaun Watson from a fantasy football perspective because that's the gig. And so I'll just leave it at that. Lots to discuss about him as a person, as whether he should even be in the NFL. But anyway, he's eligible to play in an NFL game this Sunday. Our job is to talk about his fantasy football perspective and potential, and so that's what we're doing, and we're leaving it at that.
Yes, we will navigate that. All right, others receiving votes. Quickly, as we see some of the names, including Brian Robinson Jr., who's been running angry lately.
Yeah, over those last 4 games, by the way, the Giants have allowed 6 rushing touchdowns to running back, and so now Robinson, to your point, who's had 15 touches now or more in 3 straight games, including over 20 in 2 of them, should get a lot of run against the Giants. He comes in at running back 25 for me. Kieran Williams, look, it doesn't have to be pretty. This is damning with faint praise, but he is the lead running back of the Rams so far, and Seattle does allow the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. He's running back 27 for me, so he's a low-end flex, but if you're desperate, you could do worse and probably have. And then finally, the Gus bust. We'll see if J.K. Dobbins is active for this one, but Gus Edwards came back, immediately got 84% of the team running back carries. He had 16 carries and a touchdown in both games he's played so far this year. And Denver, for all their struggles on offense, they also haven't been great against the run. Since week 4, they allow the 5th most rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. Give me the Gus bus against Denver as a top 30 play.
Yep. On Brian Robinson, just quickly, he's the highest rated rookie running back by PFF right now, and he got shot at the start of the season. He has been fantastic. Even though he doesn't have the yards per carry, he has the success rate. He's playing fantastically the past few weeks.
He should be comeback player of the year. He won't be. He's not eligible. But that when you think about, by the way, and it's not fair because Breece Hall got hurt, but the fact that, we're seeing what Ken Walker is doing right now. We're seeing what Dameon Pierce has done. We saw what Breece Hall, and the fact that Pro Football Focus has Brian Robinson as their number 1 rated rookie running back is unbelievably impressive.
I would just
also, it makes you. Hey, can I? Let me look under the hood here a little bit. I love Brian Robinson.
He's been good.
He's been very good.
All right, let's get to some guys.
He's been very good. And what was exciting, by the way, last week is he actually started getting involved in the passing game.
Yes.
He only caught a couple of balls. One of them he turned into a touchdown. But still, even 2 or 3 receptions a game is huge for Brian Robinson.
All right, let's flip over to the hate list, including another popular name here, Miles Sanders, notwithstanding what he did on the weekends, but he gets a very tough matchup against Tennessee.
Week 1 was the last time that the Tennessee Titans allowed an opposing running back to get over 70 rushing yards in a game. Week 1. This entire year, they've given up two touchdowns to an opposing running back. 2 rushing touchdowns, I should say. They've given up 2. I can count the number of rushing touchdowns they've given up to opposing running backs on one hand, and I don't need 3 fingers. Yeah, I could do the other 3 fingers. I got all sorts of stuff I could do with those 3 fingers. And I only need 2 to count the 2 rushing touchdowns. Over the last 4 weeks, by the way, Titans allowing just 50 rushing yards per game, under 3 yards per carry to opposing running backs. And also, the other thing is Tennessee is the worst pass defense in the NFL over the last month. So if
Christian Fulton makes me nervous every time they throw in his direction. Yeah, you can throw him that secondary.
Right, exactly. So the expectation here is that you see Jalen Hurts. It's going to be a Devontae Smith game. It's going to be an A.J. Brown game, somewhat of a Jalen Hurts game.
Revenge game for A.J. Brown.
Revenge game for A.J. game. Exactly. There is a bunch of games where a former player is going to face a big name player is going to face his former team, and so A.J. Brown, of course, facing the Titans. Tyler Conklin, of course, facing the Vikings.
Okay.
I'm sure that's a big one that you're focusing on.
Think about that one.
But so it's not the one that's going to get the most attention this week, but it is the one that'll make you feel a lot less icky.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's get to Jamaal Williams. 4 straight games with 0 targets.
He's not involved in the passing game.
Just scores touchdowns and nothing else.
And one of the things that we didn't talk about in Rotoworld headlines is that DeAndre Swift, you know what happened yesterday?
What happened, Matthew?
He wasn't on the injury list.
Unbelievable.
For the first time, I think since 2005. I think the first time he wasn't on the injury list. Completely healthy, apparently, and so thinking about the fact that Jamaal Williams doesn't have passing game usage, we expect an increased workload for DeAndre Swift because now he's fully healthy. And you mentioned the touchdowns, right? Okay, so, in games in which Jamaal Williams doesn't score a touchdown, he's averaging 7.5 fantasy points per game. The Jaguars have allowed 1 rushing touchdown the last 3 games. And so less of a workload, no passing game usage, tough matchup. Jamaal Williams outside my top 20 this week.
Okay, let's talk about Latavius Murray, the superstar of the Denver Broncos offense, their identity, their hub, their beating heart. But he didn't do much on the weekend, and not expecting much from him against Baltimore.
He's unfortunately not. Again, we talk about there's a couple of pros to Latavius Murray, and one of them was he's going to get all the work. Well, Mike Boone activated off the IR this week. We expect him to play. We hope he should play. There's a chance that he could play this week. He's activated, practicing. But either way, it's a tough matchup against the Ravens. Baltimore allowing under 45 rushing yards to running backs now in 4 straight games. They've given up 2.6 yards per carry to running backs. They've given up just 1 rushing touchdown in the last 4. And so don't you think that if you're Baltimore, you're like, you know what? We'll take our chances with Russ. Yeah. We need to stop Latavius Murray. Former Raven, another revenge game.
Another one I've completely forgotten about.
Yeah, another hashtag revenge game. Latavius Murray, who had a cup of coffee with the Ravens. There's half the teams in the NFL that could be a revenge game for Latavius Murray. But once again, a player facing a former team that won't make you feel icky. Latavius Murray outside my top 30 this week, especially if Boone is active. If Boone's out, then you raise him a little bit because maybe there's a chance he falls into the end zone. But I think the Ravens take care of business in this one. I don't think it's going to be that close. I think, they struggled last week. I think the Ravens
minus 8.5 is one of my favorite bets this week. I think that's going to be ugly. Yeah. All right, let's go to break. When we come back, pass catcher, love, hate, headlined by one of your revenge games, A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
I want AJ to have all the success in the world, just not this Sunday. If he's obviously having a great year, and I want to continue doing so. I just hope, Sunday's not his best day.
I'm pretty sure some people that still love me, and I'm pretty sure it's a lot of people that, hate my guts. But however it happens or whatever happens, I'm just going to be, excited for another opportunity.
That was A.J. Brown on the Titans reunion for that Ryan Tannehill. This is a proper revenge game because A.J. Brown has really kind of pointed to the fact that, the Titans don't have any wide receivers that are playing that well. He's tweeting about, it's not like I don't know. I don't think Ryan Tannehill says much about Miami from memory, but this is one where A.J. Brown wants to light that up.
It's weird, right? Because the first voice you heard was Ryan Tannehill. The second voice you heard was A.J. Brown. For those of you listening on podcast or SiriusXM radio, Tannehill took the high road here. But on one hand, you sort of get it with A.J. Brown. He wanted a new deal. They didn't want to give him. They didn't want to pay them. So he feels probably some disrespect, as I'm guessing. And then then they trade him. They trade him and they draft a guy that basically has a very similar profile. So on the one hand, you're sort of like, I get it, I understand. Hey, why'd you break up with me? On the other hand, dude, they traded you to Philly. Yeah. They didn't send you to they didn't send you to whatever, Cleveland.
The 1 seed. Yeah.
Exactly. They didn't send you to the Canadian Football League. You're going to Philadelphia and you're going to play with Jalen Hurts, who is one of your best friends in real life. That was something that prior to them, playing together, they were very close in real life. So they sent you to an amazing franchise with one of your best friends.
A better situation.
A better situation. You should, you Melvin Gordon did. You know what I mean? Come on.
Yeah. I would like to see A.J. Brown one day on the Dolphins or the Chiefs or something. Yeah. That throws the ball. He's running to tag Derrick Henry now to Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders.
He went from last year, the Tennessee Titans was one of the two most run-heavy teams in the NFL. The other one was the Philadelphia Eagles.
Exactly. Play-action king, A.J. Brown, but he's on the love list.
He is absolutely on the love list. They throw more than the Titans do this year. I mean, certainly the Eagles do. And the other thing is we talked about as to one of the reasons why we don't like Miles Sanders is because how we expect this game to play out. We expect Jalen Hurts to throw. Again, over the last month, no team in the NFL has been worse against the pass than the Tennessee Titans. And so A.J. Brown, who gets obviously a lot of targets and gets a lot of love, should have a good game here. Get this. The Tennessee Titans have allowed at least one touchdown to a wide receiver in 4 straight games. Over the year, they've given up the 3rd most touchdowns to opposing wide receivers and the 2nd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. As you see it there on your screen, only the Steelers allow more. The Titans are worse than teams like the Lions, Falcons, Vikings in terms of most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Big A.J. Brown game coming. He's a top 10 wide receiver for me.
Yep, I like that. All right, let's go to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who gets a matchup against the Jags. The total in that game is 51.5, so expecting a lot of scoring, and Amon-Ra has been cooking lately.
He really has. He's had 7 full games so far this year, right? And in those 7 full games, he has over a 21% target share. I'm sorry, I take this back. Over 21 fantasy points per game, a 33% target share. Monstrous. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, 21 in the full 7 full games he's played. I want to reset this. In the 7 full games that Amon-Ra St. Brown has played, 21.2 fantasy points per game, a 33% target share. Why does the target share matter, Jay Croucher? I'm glad you didn't ask. Because wide receivers who see at least 7 targets against the Jags this year average over 17 fantasy points per game. They're giving up the 4th most receptions to the slot this year as well, which is obviously where the sun god lines up most of the day. You mentioned the over-under. We expect a lot of fireworks in this game. I think it's I was going to say I think it's a sneaky shootout, but I don't think it's all that sneaky.
No,
I think it's an obvious shootout.
Yes.
It's an obvious shootout.
Smack you in the face type of shootout.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Michael Bay type of shootout.
No one likes shooting fish in a barrel or Jaguars or Lions like I do. So, yeah, give me some Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm at wide receiver 6 this week.
Okay, can I interest you in some Garrett Wilson, who was brought back to life by the immortal Mike White. Elijah Moore as well, but Garrett Wilson was really the star.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Wilson. So, look, feel like, I'll just put it this way, Jets fans. Look, on Wilson's this year, you're 1 for 2. You're like you're shooting 50%. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
50% gets you in the Hall of Fame. You're batting 500.
Franchise quarterback down the drain, but the wide
number 2 overall pick.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Like, but it's fine. Like it's so whatever. Like it didn't work out, but at least Sam Darnold. Chad Pennington. Like I guess that's the Joe Namath was good. You guys won a Super Bowl with him.
Namath's great.
Anyway, in games this year, in which Mike White or Joe Flacco have started, Garrett Wilson is averaging 19.4 fantasy points per game. In games in which Zach Wilson has been under center, he's averaging 8.4.
Yes,
that's a big difference there.
Yes.
Well, this week, Mike White once again gets a start for your New York Jets, your fighting Sauce Gardners, and 3 of the past 4 games, the usage has been there, right? At least 7 targets, at least 90 yards, and 3 of the last 4. 11 different wide receivers have scored at least 15 fantasy points against the Vikings so far this year. 11 different ones. I say Garrett Wilson is wide receiver number 12. I have him as a top 20 play, as you see Wilson's game log right there on your screen. You had me at Zach Wilson not starting.
Yeah, roller coaster season for Garrett Wilson. I think the good thing with Mike White is, look, Mike White's not Patrick Mahomes, clearly, but he does the easy stuff, and the easy stuff is all Garrett Wilson needs because he can take slant routes to the house like Odell Beckham in his prime.
Yeah.
That's all he needs, and he's getting it from Mike White. Another guy who's
if you look at the underlying metrics in terms of what Garrett Wilson is doing as a rookie, like it's not a long list of other people that compare, and Beckham's like one of the Beckham's rookie year, like it's a ridiculous list of people he compares favorably to.
If he had Mike White and Joe Flacco for the whole season, we'd be talking about it in the same breath as like Justin Jefferson's rookie season.
Right, exactly. But think about the statement. Think about how insane that is. If only he had Mike White or Joe Flacco the whole season.
Joe Flacco.
That's how insane this is.
Yeah.
Like
it's kind of a reflection on Zach Wilson. Anyway, another guy who's in a better situation.
If you had a Zach Wilson jersey, would you? And you had the number 2. would you try to turn the 2 into a 7 and then sort of like slap on a 1 with paint or something like that for the 17 for Garrett Wilson? Or would you just go buy another Garrett Wilson jersey?
You're literally talking to a guy who's wearing a James Harden Nets jersey, and James Harden got kicked off the team after 12 months. So I'd probably just keep the Zach Wilson jersey and embrace it.
Just own it. Just walk through suburban neighborhoods.
Yeah, I like
see if
it.
any moms notice you.
You own the bad jerseys. They're iconic. They got good value. Anyway, another guy's got good value.
I used to be friends with a guy that wore nothing, I swear to God, nothing but old USFL, like not the new USFL that we have now that's here on NBC and Peacock. No, the old, is that a Tampa Bay Bandits, jersey? Yeah, it is. Like, used to wear nothing but old USFL.
The bag runs.
Had both home and away New Jersey Generals jerseys.
That's kind of strange.
Remember the Houston Gamblers? Oh
yeah,
exactly. That's
good.
That would
good
be
for
your
my
team.
team.
Yeah, that'd be
good
your
for my
team.
brand. All right, TJ Hawkinson, who has seen a 22% target share in 4 games since the trade, and I think another sneaky thing from last week is that the Minnesota Vikings passing game looked great, and it wasn't just purely Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen got involved. Hawkinson's still there, and he's on the love list.
And that was against the Patriots.
Yeah.
And in prime time. I was shocked. Kudos to Kirk Cousins, whether he's shirtless, whether he's wearing a uniform, whether he's in chains, not chains. Kirk looked absolutely great, and it is clear that Hawkinson, since he's come over from Detroit, has really made a difference here. He's had multiple red zone targets of 3 or 4. Kirk likes to look for him. Kirk has traditionally always looked for the tight end in the red zone. Number of years with Jordan Reed, the great Jordan Reed with Washington when they were there. Had some moments over the year with Kyle Rudolph as well in Minnesota. So Hawkinson, and if he'd only come down with if he against the Patriots, I'd still be alive in my guillotine league. Like, he got 2 targets in the end zone that he should have caught. And if he catches one of them, he doesn't even need to catch both of them. Just catch one of them, dude. They both hit you in the hands. Catch one of them, and I'm still alive in my guillotine league. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, Matthew, that was brilliant. Somehow we talked about T.J. Hawkinson's red zone usage, and you still somehow made it about you. That is my magic power. That is my brilliance. I can make anything. It doesn't matter what the topic is. Somehow, some way, I can make it about me. What I will tell you here is it's a good matchup against your Jets because Sauce Gardner's not going to be on T.J. Hawkinson. No, New York is bottom 5 in terms of most receptions allowed to tight ends this season.
Blockbuster matchup there. Sauce Gardner against Justin Jefferson. It's going to be a fun one. Glad he's not on the love list. He's getting shut down by Sauce.
It's interesting. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be really interesting. I have Adam Thielen on the hate list. We'll get to him in a second here, but anyway, I'll keep going.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go to others receiving votes, headlined by another rookie. Christian Watson just keeps catching touchdowns for fun.
3 straight games with 6 or more targets, and the Bears are really bad against deep passes. They're allowing the second most yards per catch to wide receivers as well over the last 4 weeks. 45% of Christian Watson's targets in the last 3 games have come on deep passes. I think Aaron Rodgers owns Chicago. I think Watson keeps it rolling. Wide receiver 25 for me. Hey, George Pickens going against Atlanta, who allows the 4th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. He's had 35 fewer targets than Deontay Johnson, but only 1 fewer fantasy point. We talked about that a lot yesterday with Lawrence. Zay Jones now has double-digit targets in back-to-back weeks and in 3 of the last 5. Lions allow the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. How about Mac Hollins? Mac Hollins and Foster Moreau, both of the Raiders, both against the Chargers. Mac Hollins playing 93% of the offensive snaps, has 11 or more fantasy points in 4 of the last 6. Kind of like sneaky deep league value there for Mac Hollins, very quietly. And Foster Moreau, who scored last week. He's had 12 or more fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 games. Chargers allow the 3rd most yards to opposing tight ends. And then the revenge game everyone's talking about, Tyler Conklin going back to Minnesota. A lot of bad blood there between these two as well. Look, everyone's going to talk about Garrett Wilson, but the fact of the matter is that since week 7, Tyler Conklin, an 18% target share. Mike White does like to dump it down. I think Mike White is an upgrade for Conklin. Vikings, bottom 10 defense in terms of most fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends.
Yep.
And again, hashtag revenge game.
Hashtag revenge game. All right. It's going to be a revenge
There'll be
game.
a lot of Minnesota Viking. Do you think there'll be more Minnesota Viking Conklin jerseys or New York Jets Conklin jerseys in attendance? Like, as teams show their loyalty. Guys,
I think there's going to be more James Harden Nets jerseys in Minnesota than either of those Conklin jerseys. It's going to be some revenge games against you, Matthew Berry, because we go to the hate list.
Yeah.
Revenge game for Adam Thielen against you. You're not buying Thielen after the game against the Patriots.
I know. By the way, he was on the hate list last week and showed me up. Like, just brutal
Doubling
call
down.
by me last week. Like,
Double parked, doubling down.
Yeah, I am. And I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie. Because, he made me look stupid last week. No. He made me look stupid last week. Adam Thielen had an unbelievably great game. And to your point, Sauce Gardner's going to be on Justin Jefferson. So Kirk Cousins traditionally does not like to throw to covered guys. Like, he won't throw a guy open. Maybe, Jefferson's a special case, and so maybe he'll just be like, throw it in there in coverage anyway and let Jefferson make a play. But maybe there's a chance that he goes more to Thielen. What I will say, though, is why he made the hate list is that even after last week's game, and he had a great fantasy game on Thanksgiving, he still has now 7 straight games with under 70 yards. He hasn't gotten to more than 70 yards now in 7 straight games. Jets overall allowing the 3rd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, the 2nd fewest yards per game to wide receivers. One time, there's been only one time this year as you see just Adam Thielen's last 7 games right there. Didn't get to anyone. He did get the 61 yards. He got 9 receptions, which is why his fantasy game was so big, plus the touchdown. So the volume was there, but the yardage hasn't been. So you're counting on volume here. It's worth noting, though, I think this is important. The Jets have allowed 60 yards to multiple wide receivers in the same game only once this year. So we expect Jefferson, obviously, to get there. So just how lucky do you feel that Thielen also has a big game here? You're counting on a touchdown here or massive volume. I don't necessarily know that you get either of them.
Yeah, I'm with you, because the reason is that Sauce Gardner doesn't shadow guys. He's just on the left side all the time. DJ Reed also, who's kind of been lost in the fact that Sauce Gardner's been so good. DJ Reed is awesome. He's a great cornerback. He's going to be on the right side. Jefferson's going to move around. Thielen's going to get a lot of both of those guys, and they're both really good. So I'm with you on being anti-Thielen. Treylon Burks. He's also on the hate list, even though he's seen certainly an uptick across the board, but gets a tough matchup against the Eagles.
Really tough matchup. Is Philadelphia allows the 2nd lowest catch rate to wide receivers and the 4th fewest yards per game on deep passes. 56% of Burks' yards over the last 2 games have come on those 2 different 51-yard receptions. Eagles really good against the pass as well. I think they're going to try to run on Philadelphia. I think this is a big Derrick Henry game.
Yep, seems like it. All right, let's go to break. When we come back, quarterback love-hate, including Mike White. Mike White makes one of those lists. Download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster and get the latest injury updates, player news, plus much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today, Matthew. Let's talk quarterback love-hate.
Let's talk quarterback love-hate. Once again, I'm curious about the music.
You don't like it?
I guess it's supposed to be love and then hate. It's like dude, love, and then hate. But I don't know.
It's like a 1978 kind of film. I don't know. There's some weird vibes to it.
Yeah, feels like the end of a movie that you're watching like on Cinemax, waiting for another movie.
Okay.
To start. The ones that started late at night.
Let's move away from Cinemax to Joe Burrow, who destroyed the Kansas City Chiefs last season across 2 games, including memorably in the AFC title game. Ja'Marr Chase back, Joe Burrow back on the love list.
This is the highest over-under on the slate. We expect a ton of fantasy points to be scored here. You think about the 2 games that Burrow played last year against KC, averaged 27.7 fantasy points per game. That includes, of course, the playoff game as well. Chiefs allowed touchdown passes at the 2nd highest rate this season. In fact, teams that face the Kansas City Chiefs average over 36 pass attempts per game. That's 4th most in the NFL. We do expect Ja'Marr Chase back. Yeah, Joe Burrow should have a lot of success trying to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. Can't wait for this game. It'll be a lot of fun. He's my number 3 quarterback this week.
Yep, the total in that game is 53 flat, highest total on the board. So, yeah, I mean, they're not going to stop each other. So there's going to be lots of fantasy points to go around. All right, let's talk about Justin Herbert, who really saved the Chargers' season against Arizona. And more importantly, I think, in a way, looks like Justin Herbert again.
Yeah, I mean, not since he performed the guttiest backdoor cover in NFL history with only one rib on Thursday night, driving down to have the Chargers covered. Have we seen Herbert play as well as he did last week as well? Since he returned, since Keenan Allen returned, Justin Herbert's averaging almost 24 fantasy points per game. What do you know? You get your best receiver back, suddenly you're a lot better.
Works.
He was averaging under 16.5 on the season prior to that. Good matchup with the Raiders, right? Las Vegas allowing the second most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And in fact, over the last month, they're giving up a 76% completion rate, over 8 yards per attempt. Justin Herbert's my number 5 quarterback for the week.
Yep. A guy who looked like Justin Herbert on the weekend was Trevor Lawrence. When Lawrence is playing well, the way he zips the ball looks like Justin Herbert. Had his, superhero origin story against the Ravens, played out of his mind, and now he gets a juicy matchup against the Detroit Lions.
What word was that, juicy?
Yeah, kind of put a little more oomph in it.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? On behalf of my producers,
Matthew, you've already got the gig. You don't need to laugh
That's a good
at my
point.
jokes.
That's a good point. They painted my name's in the title. They already designed the bumper stickers. All right. So sure. Trevor Lawrence. To your point about Trevor Lawrence. So last week, he was the 6th best. He was obviously had a huge week last week against the Ravens, and very quietly since week 6. He's actually the 8th best quarterback in fantasy. He's had at least 18 fantasy points in 4 of the last 6, and now he gets Detroit. No team in the NFL gives up more fantasy points per game to the opposing quarterback than the Detroit Lions. And weirdly, the Lions also have allowed at least 40 rushing yards to a quarterback in 4 straight games. Now, some of them are guys you expect. Josh Allen, Justin Fields, but also Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones. You see it there on your screen. And so Trevor Lawrence, who has a little bit of wheels to his game.
Yeah, sure.
I think he's an interesting play this week. I have him as a top 8 fantasy quarterback. Trevor Lawrence. Love him, love the hair.
Yes. T-Law, as some call him. I'm not on board with that nickname
Right,
at all, as
no.
we've talked about
No
before.
T-Law?
No, it's J-Law. J-Law is the one kind of letter hyphen law.
I do, if choosing laws, I
Yes.
do prefer J-Law over T-Law.
Yeah, even after what he did to the Ravens, it's still J-Law.
They're both beautiful people.
Yes. All right, let's get to some more
both-
beautiful people. Others receiving votes with 3 guys who have all made a Super Bowl, and then the best of all, Mike White.
Who will go to a Super Bowl this year?
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. So, listen, Aaron Rodgers is there. Look, he owns the Bears. We talked about this yesterday. I think he's going to play. He's going to practice again today. I think he has at least one last hurrah. Bears allowed touchdown passes at the 2nd highest rate over the last 4 weeks. And over the last 3 seasons, Aaron Rodgers averages over 24 fantasy points per game against Chicago. He owns the Bears. You see Jared Goff there. We talked about this Jacksonville Detroit game as well. At home this year, and the game is in Detroit, Jared Goff averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. Jags allow the 7th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, 2nd highest over-under on the slate as well. So a lot of fantasy points should be scored in Jacksonville. Detroit, Garoppolo since week 5 has been the 10th best quarterback in fantasy. Miami has allowed red zone touchdown passes at the 2nd highest rate this year. So I think he's sort of an interesting QB2. And then Mike White, Minnesota has allowed 300 passing yards now in 3 straight games, including to Mac Jones. Right? They've given up multiple touchdown passes in 5 of the past 6. Mike White makes the easy look easy. I do think that he'll be able to move the ball, especially when you've got Garrett Wilson and now rejuvenated Elijah Moore. Don't forget Tyler Conklin in his revenge game. I do think Mike White, is a viable streamer this week.
I think everyone's a streamer against that Minnesota pass defense.
Yeah.
They cannot stop anyone, and they rejuvenated Mac Jones. All right, let's go to the hate list. And the guy who preceded Mac Jones in New England, Thomas Brady, is on the hate list.
Yeah, I love Tom Brady, so it's hard to put him on the hate list, but the numbers are the numbers, and that since he has joined Tampa Bay, Tom Brady, and these are, a lot of these are games are when things were really rolling good, and they're not as strong these days. In the 5 regular season games he's played against New Orleans as a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he's averaging 12.4 fantasy points per game. He's had under 10 fantasy points. He's had literally single-digit fantasy points in 3 of those 5 games. And 2 of them came at home, where this game is. This game's in Tampa Bay. Saints, I think, but this is the most important thing, right? Saints are 8th in pressure rate. They really get after the quarterback. And so with Wirfs out with an ankle injury, their right tackle, their all-pro right tackle, this one doesn't feel great because we know Brady isn't going to get there with his legs. So it's got to be volume of the passing touchdowns. They haven't been there this year. I think this is probably a lower scoring game. I think the over-under is one of the lowest on the slate.
Yep, 40 and a half.
40 and a half.
Very low.
Yeah, Tom Brady merely QB 15 for me this week.
Yeah, I think this Saints defense, now that it's healthier, Lattimore back, I think they're going to be a top 6-7 unit the rest of the way. And Brady has shown that he's not afraid to struggle against the Saints. Got shut out by them last season.
Yeah, Lattimore missed last week, but the expectation is it's Monday night is that he'll be back.
He should be back for Mike Evans. All right, Daniel Jones, shock horror, quarterback going up against your Washington Commanders, makes the hate list. Why don't you like Danny Dimes?
Well, because he's going to have to face my Commanders, who are, you know what they're doing? They're taking command.
Again,
that's what they do.
With the taking command.
Taking command.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, they're fighting Mandos.
This
is the way.
They're like heavy favorites now to make the playoffs. It's unbelievable.
It is.
How did this happen in America?
But,
so how did someone not stop this?
You know,
At some point, they're going to deal with this every week now.
How does this happen? In this economy? Are you kidding me? By the way, they're not going to make the playoffs. I've seen the end of this movie way too many times. They're not going to make the playoffs. All they're going to do is raise my hopes only to crush them once again. Do you understand? That is my life.
I'm checking the odds now on BetMGM.
I am Charlie Brown, and the Washington Commanders are Lucy with a football. This will be the... I'm just letting you know.
They're
that's
minus
what it
165 to make the playoffs on BetMGM. Minus 165. You get plus 135 to no. Their win total is 9.5. So they're saying there's almost a 50% chance they get to 10 wins. It's unbelievable. Someone make it stop. Ryan Daboll, please.
It'd be crazy. I mean, they need to beat the Giants. They play Giants 2 of the next 3 weeks. They had a bye in between.
You win both, you're in. You'll make it.
We win both, we're in. We need to at least get a split. And I would not like to. I hope it's this game because you don't want to go into the bye off of a loss. You'd like to go into the bye off of a win. Keep the good times rolling. But listen, here's the thing. My Commanders, since week 5, they allow the fewest passing yards per game. They've given up under 200 passing yards in 7 of 8 games over that stretch. 8 of 11 games this year, Daniel Jones has 1 or fewer touchdown passes. And the rushing, which is what has kept his fantasy value, afloat, that hasn't been there recently. Under 25 rushing yards in 3 of his past 4 games. Once again, think this is a low-scoring game. 40.5 is the last line I saw on this one. And so I'm out on Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones outside my I don't think he's a viable streamer this week.
Wow.
I'm at 22.
All in Commanders.
Outside, all in, yeah.
Okay.
We're taking command.
I like it.
Let's go.
On the
Jack
second
Del
taking
Rio
command,
team.
we will go to break.
Maybe
when
we'll
we
see
come
Chase
back.
Young. We might see Chase
Thursday
Young
night
this week.
football player props. Bills-Patriots. Let's go. The action never stops at BetMGM, Matthew. Sign up now using bonus code BERRY, that's your last name, and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. Simply download the BetMGM app today or go to BetMGM.com and enter bonus code BERRY to make your first wager risk-free. There is no risk up to $1,000.
It is free of risk.
Yes.
You're like, I don't want to risk this $1,000. Well, you don't have to. It's not risky. That's the thing.
A paucity of risk.
A paucity of risk. There's literally zero risk because if you bet $1,000 and your first bet does not pay off, you get $1,000 back.
Yes, risk-free.
They give you a free bet.
And
there
you can
go.
use it on any of these props, which are the most bet props at BetMGM tonight for Bills at Patriots. Stephon Diggs to score the first touchdown, plus 550. Devin Singletary to score anytime touchdown, plus 125. And our man, Rhamondre Stevenson, who I think is going to get another run in this segment, over 35.5 receiving yards, minus 110. That number is going up. What's your favorite bet?
It is that one right there. It's already up to 36.5 receiving yards. My guess is it maybe goes up a little bit more. But Rhamondre Stevenson's had 50 or more receiving yards now in 4 of the past 5 games. We talked about him early in the show about the fact that there's no Damian Harris and how much they trust him in the passing game. 5 straight games now with 6 or more targets for Rhamondre Stevenson. And then you think about this Buffalo Bills defense. Yes, they are getting healthier, but they've allowed at least 35 receiving yards to a running back in 3 straight games. Give me Rhamondre Stevenson over 36.5 receiving yards, which is what the current line is on BetMGM. Even though it's going up, give me the over on Rhamondre Stevenson.
Yep, piggybacking that, my favorite one is Rhamondre over 4.5 receptions. It was plus 100, but apparently someone has tapped into the Microsoft Teams pre-production call because now it's minus 125 over 4.5. Look, he had 9 receptions last week, 6 the week before that. He's gone over 4 out of 5, and he's just getting the targets consistently. 10 targets, 6, 7, 7, 8. So he's getting the volume, and I think they're probably going to be playing from behind, probably dumping off to Rhamondre. Also like Mac Jones and his over on passing yards, which is 229.5, 382 last week. He's gone over 2 weeks in a row. I think Mac Jones is back, and I believe he will go over.
I kind of like that. Listen, it's Thursday Night Football. It's ugly football, low-scoring game, AFC East. So you know what I like to do.
What do you like to do, man?
Kicker props.
Oh, no.
Come on. Come on board. Come on board with the kicker props.
The KPs.
Tyler Bass, over 1.5 made field goals. Look, he's made at least 2 field goals in 4 of the past 5 games.
Sure.
He's had 2 or more attempts in all 5 games. Patriots are 7th in red zone defense this season. They're pretty good when they get in close. Again, this is we expect this to be somewhat of a low-scoring game. It's 43.5 is the over-under, kind of a knockdown drag-out. So, yes, give me the over on Tyler Bass, 1.5 made field goals.
This has become your brand, the kicker props.
Yeah.
I like the quarterback rushing props, but only for guys who are slow. Like
Right.
a big Matt Ryan guy.
Yeah.
Don't like Mac Jones is over tonight, but it's good. You've made yourself a little betting brand. The
There you
kicker
go.
props, the
It's
overs.
hashtag on brand. Love Hate will be up soon on rotoworld.com, so please go check it out. As always, it is free. Good luck tonight in Week 13, Thursday Night Football. It's closing time, which means you got to go home, or you can't stay here at least. For Jay Croucher, I'm Matthew Berry. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.